Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming today and excited for the Q&A after this session. I'm Tom Wesselman. My career has been about two things. The first is helping people communicate with the UC business at Cisco, building soft phones and WebEx and collaboration, and then with Plantronics and Polycom, working on the devices and connecting them up to the web. I'm really excited to be here at TeleSign and combining those two to help people interact and stay safe on the internet. Starting with a sobering statistic from LexisNexis this year. This is the first year that successful fraud attempts have outnumbered those that were presented. This is a difficult time for all of us with COVID, but it's a boom time for fraud. And we're going to go into more details and more about how that's impacting businesses around the world. Fraud is the new normal. It's not the exception. It's not the incident. Expect that fraudulent customers are coming to register every day. Expect that the accounts of your good customers are being threatened and compromised. I think 5% of revenue loss is actually really low. This is just a literal fraud, but what about the fear of fraud, the revenue lost to people not wanting to participate, not wanting to try a new company and their service to see if it would work for them because they're afraid of fraud. It's really much bigger than this. Across Asia PAC, let's be honest about this. No one really wants to be worried about fraud. We would just like to worry about our business and driving revenue, right? So when we envision a customer, we envision that person interested in the product, right? Not the person who's looking to exploit our business, our websites, or our services. The changes in the world are making this harder, not easier. As the world goes fully mobile, most of the world is accessed online. The things we're doing are more and more online. So with this, the enemy is also getting much better and the targets are getting richer. The tactics are getting more sophisticated. The hacker community is upping their game and we need to do that as well. We can talk about the cost of fraud itself, but how much is actually lost? This was another study done to show that the actual cost of fraud is around 3.5 times the loss itself. In the same time frame, since COVID, mobile usage has increased a whole lot here, and this increase is directly related to the fraud using the mobile device and the increased usage of going online with that. At the same time, everyone's worried about fraud, but we have a real life business to run. Talking about revenue versus fraud and that difficult decision. If we could, we'd all invest in everything, but this requires hard decisions. So how do you balance the right investment? We're going to talk a bit about that. Funny personal story on this. It's our tools to combat fraud are very sophisticated, but my wife and I once had chickens and we cared about the security of the chickens every once in a while and built a nice coop. But the raccoons were out there all the day looking and trying to get in, and they had lots of time. So I think the same way, the fraudsters spend all day, every day, trying to attack and trying to exploit your site and your interfaces and your users. So it's not that they're smarter, but they're just really good and have a lot of time. And so I'd like to share kind of some thoughts on how we combat that together. So we're observing that while fraud is increasing, spending on combating it is actually decreasing. So as more and more transactions happen online, the incentive for fraudsters and cyber criminals get richer. And at the same time, consumers are wanting that their digital interactions are easier, not harder. So companies are in a hard place. Do I, as a business, add more security and make it harder to do business with me? Or do I make it easier to do business with and be less secure? Companies that have put all their money into the digital experience at the expense of fraud prevention are going to be targeted. It's not just that you're exposed, but you will be targeted. They have sophisticated ways of identifying weaker companies, weaker online platforms, and exploiting those weaknesses. 55% of consumers say security is the most important aspect of their online experience. Honestly, this is crazy. I'm passionate about changing this. This is not really their main concern. They don't want to stay safe. They want to use the product or service or buy it or do whatever they're there for. They don't want to think about security, and we are committed to making this easier and better for them. You shouldn't have to choose. I think about it in terms of core versus context. People use a cloud platform like Amazon or Microsoft so that they don't have to deal with a lot of the complexity of running a data center. The bottom line is fraud is context to most businesses. If it wouldn't be great, it would be great if it just went away, but it doesn't. So how do you deal with context? You find the right partner to use it, just as you might enlist a cloud provider to host the data center. We at TeleSign would like to help be that partner to help deal with it so you don't have to. So going to focus a bit here on the financial sector and specific challenges there. There was a famous bank robber. His name was Willie Sutton, and he was asked by a reporter, "Why do you rob banks?" And he said, "Because that's where the money is." And that's kind of literally true. And it has real world implications for the financial industry. These financial institutions have higher costs. They spend more to defend, more to prevent fraud, and maybe are liable, or often are liable more for the losses accrued by the customer, right? So you got to have the investigation, the detection, and the recovery of the assets. At the heart of this is identity verification as a core challenge. So the rise of synthetic identities, it's not so much that the end customer is actually doing something wrong, but someone else has part or all of their identity and is using that in a nefarious way and causing trouble and risk to them and your business. And the rise of mobile and digital wallets and other contactless payment systems have created additional difficulty. The third part is honestly that the tools we do have just aren't being used, and this is what we want to help change. So specific use cases in the financial center: account onboarding and knowing your customer over the life cycle of that customer, basically taking from a stranger to a customer. And then some of these things, giving access to new services and having the right level of trust for the right transaction. One word for it is privileged account management. So perhaps getting in to log into the account is fairly straightforward, but when you actually go to buy something or book a reservation or transfer money, we up-level the right layers of trust and verification at the right time. So we make it really easy to engage, more difficult to do more serious things. So at the core, again, identity verification just remains a top challenge of how we actually get this done, knowing who is on the other side of this transaction. We've talked about the increasing push toward remote interactions and transactions. In 2020, 82% of deposits to bank accounts were made using digital channels, online and mobile. We are literally living in the future, and COVID accelerated that future, accelerated us into this new world. The main issue with the way that many banks are implementing a digital banking model is this challenge of getting the right stringent identity, the verification during the onboarding process, knowing your customer and who they are, preventing money laundering, complying with the regulatory compliance around the entire world. There are a whole bunch of challenges, and looking forward to, in the Q&A session, to hear a little bit more about specific challenges you face and how we might help. So now we're talking about actually growing the customer experience. How do you improve this? The bottom line is that we all want to provide a better product, a better service, a better experience for our customers. TeleSign is here for three main things. We don't do anything else. We don't do marketing. We don't do sell data to anyone else. We're here to keep you and your customers safer online. Connect, protect, and defend. So connect your customers no matter where they are in the world. We have a global presence, global partnerships, global footprint to do this. Protect them as they onboard, as they live out their life cycle, and defend against new threats. When something's happening in the world, we'll be there to be the experts for you to help you keep your customers safe. We do this on a global scale for your customers and for enterprises. So we have TeleSign leverages multiple global databases to help detect and identify fraud patterns faster and alert you. Our product score evaluates phone number data, phone type, which carrier, account, device ID, thousands of different fraud signals to aggregate that into one real-time view of risk. In addition to looking at the traffic, we have to look at traffic patterns, anomalous behavior, is someone making different types of phone calls in different ways, and we can react to that. Taken together, this can help prevent attacks. It can help identify who the customer is and what their risk level is, and so you're engaging with the real customer at the right time. Everyone knows the best practices for passwords. Make it long, use letters and numbers and symbols and keep it complicated. The problem is people don't. There are two types of passwords, those that are simple and those that aren't used. The phone number is a way to simply make this much safer. Multi-factor authentication is really about multiplying probabilities. So the probability of getting hacked may be 1 in 1,000. The probability of your phone being stolen is maybe 1 in 1,000, but multiply those together and it's 1 in 1,000,000. And we want to help you layer on the right verification at the right time. TeleSign is here across the user journey, all these stages of the customer to work with you and make sure that you and your customers are successful. So we used to talk about the enterprise perimeter. We've moved on to zero trust. But we have to rebuild that trust. And how do we do that? We layer on trust using identity as the new perimeter to our online world. Very much looking forward to the Q&A. Please follow me to the next session and we'll talk more. Thank you.